Welcome to Recogs, the show where we learn how the world's best business operators build consumer brands from sourcing to selling, brought to you by Manufactured. Manufactured is an online platform that helps brands source, manufacture, finance, and distribute inventory across 20 industries and 25 countries. If you're a brand owner or operator and you're looking for inventory financing help, or you want to explore our manufacturing network and see if we can lower your COGS, check out manufactured.com. Our guest today is Zachary Curhan, who is the founder of TRUWILD. TRUWILD produces supplements for those who love being outside. We discuss why supplements companies weren't hitting the mark in his mind for his use case, the differences between supplements for the indoor gym enthusiast versus the outdoor enthusiast, how he thinks about different sales channel as he expands D2C, Amazon, and wholesale, how he launches new products and SKUs, and so much more. Without further ado, here's Zachary.
Zach, thanks so much for joining me here today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, really appreciate your time. So talk to me a little about like the aha moment from the very beginning. Like what led you to found TRUWILD? What did you not see that was kind of like already like in the market that you felt like there should be a product?
Yeah, so the aha moment was when my partner and I were hiking one day and we realized there wasn't really a better for you product for like outdoor enthusiasts. And at that time, when we were hiking, we're like, would you get a source of energy from? And at the time, it's like, there was Noon, which is like a tablet that you put in water that like help is full of like maltodextrin and filler. And it hasn't been changed for 30 years. And then we looked at like, okay, you could take Red Bull, but Red Bull's not really a healthy option. And then we realized you could take like coffee, but that would dehydrate you. And you're like, this is not really like a great energy. And like, you wouldn't want to take like a pre-workout gym supplement to go hiking, right? And so at that moment, we're like, why don't we create a product for ourselves that would be very consumer-centric, and let's create like an energy, hydration, performance product for the outdoor enthusiasts. And like at that time, we were like big into hiking. So that's where the aha moment. He made something, we gave it to 5 of our friends, we went hiking, and we're like, oh wow, this actually works.
That's awesome. I mean, I love the fact that you, of course, were kind of part of it was, of course, you and your partners, your own pain points in terms of trying to find there wasn't a supplement or something that would give you energy that was kind of geared towards the outdoors, and more so like the gym enthusiasts. But would love to kind of like dive into that a little further. Like, what specifically on the supplement side, and obviously on the energy side, what would like a person that's like in the gym every day kind of expect or want ingredients wise from like a supplement versus maybe someone that's more in your shoes that is going for a hike or outside from the energy perspective? Because I know like that's like a big part of it.
It's different supplementation, right? I mean, like a gym is like beta alanine, caffeine. You want that pump, you want that something that's going to quick and get into your system and then be like 30, 45 minutes and like feel great. When you're hiking, you don't want to have that like, you're going to crash so hard, like and burst. Like while hiking, like why do you need to feel fully pumped and jazzed, while hiking? It should just be like a long lasting energy that like gives you that energy for like what you love doing. I mean, our stuff you could use for the gym too, but like we want something that would like take your energy levels, not for just like a short period of time and not for like the indoor exertion, but for like the outdoor world. Because like if you think about it, when you're hiking or you're, let's say, I don't know, going hunting or something like outdoor related, there's so many different elements of like nature that you face that were like when you're in the gym, you're in the 4 walls, that you got something that's going to protect you.
Yeah, no, give you like be like a lot more long lasting as opposed to like a quick jolt of energy, like caffeine, for example, for the gym. What's the equivalent of that in terms of like long lasting that I guess is part of the makeup or like a big part of the makeup of TRUWILD's product?
So we have a bunch of different products, but this one we're just focused on the motion. But like we use 3 natural sources of caffeine, right? So like yerba mate, green tea, coffee bean. So that's kind of like the long lasting. I tell people it's more of a natural high. Think of like green tea. It's like a sustainable high where if like you get like a synthetic caffeine or amorphous caffeine, you're gonna have this like high like energy burst and then you're gonna crash.
Got it. Okay. So it's for the energy one, and that was the initial use case. Was that the first product, the actual the motion product?
Yeah, that was the OG. Yeah, it was the first product that we launched.
Those are products. So, talk to us a little bit about how you thought about, finding the right ingredients, and as well as, if you self manufacture, or if or if you actually used and work with a co-man, what was that process like in terms of actually getting that first product off the ground?
Yeah, so I'm quite lucky because my partner is the manufacturer, so he has 10 plus years in that industry. Yeah, so that helps, right? I mean, he's the one. So when we got samples, he's the one who actually developed it within his R&D facility. So really hats off to him to really being like the formulator and being kind of like the ingredient guru of like he knew what was out in the field, and he's the one who sourced all these different ingredients and says, I'm gonna cherry pick ideas from all these different brands that he's seen and be like, we're gonna use it for ours.
That's awesome. Wow, that's so lucky, because I've certainly talked to a lot of, CPG entrepreneurs that this is like their first stint, going to CPG, and kind of don't have that experience. And so, which normally, still some of them are very, very successful, but, I'd imagine having that kind of experience of being your own manufacturer, and also really kind of understanding like ingredient choices, and kind of being able to, kind of take inspiration from different products, but still not figuring out like what is the right one, and you actually then developing the right one. Like, that's kudos to you. That's awesome.
There's a lot of trial and error. Like if I had done this without him, there's a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of leaning on the manufacturer to help along those ways. But that's a whole different topic.
Well, actually, like, would love to like hear about like the trial and error part. Like, how how long did it take you to figure out like this was like the perfect combination? This was the right taste, for example, and the product was like the best that you could produce, or that you thought it was. Like, how long from maybe like a timestamp, perspective, did that take? And kind of, and also, how did you think about trialing too?
Yeah, I mean 6 to 9 months, I would say, right? We didn't really launch. We had the idea, I think we had the idea and it took us about so around 6 months to actually like launch it officially. But there's a lot of just getting the product, giving it to friends and family, sampling it, getting other people's feedback. That was a big thing too. I remember back in 2016 or 17, I would get little tiny plastic samples and I would send them to like 20 to 30 of my friends. And it looked kind of funny, kind of like look like little druggy bags, I guess. When they got that, they're like, "What is this?" But at the time, I tried to think of the most effective, efficient way to get this product to them, and I would write a little note to them and say, "Hey, this is something that we're launching. Please try it and give us your feedback." So there's a lot of like we want to get customer feedback or just friends feedback because it's really important to get that information to make the right decision.
Yeah, no, totally. That's and that's also like pretty lengthy too, with like a 6 9 month period. So that's awesome that you really took the time. Because I've also talked to founders too that they actually try to just get to market as quickly as they can, as they can, and kind of iterate based off of like live sales feedback, too. But talk to me a little bit. I know that you initially launched on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken. Talk to me a little bit about like what that rollout was on the launch, and also like the original product itself. And where did you kind of figure out that maybe you kind of had something here?
We launched on Amazon. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I kind of figured it out, and that was in like 20, I think at the end of 2017 is when we launched it, and we just threw it on there. And we had a lot of friends and family. Like I sent a massive email to all my friends and family, had them go buy product, helped us write reviews, trying to like get that initial kind of push. And then after that, after like 2 or 3 months, sales were trickling in, and then I got connected with a friend who helped me with like optimize my listing, optimize ads, and then from there, like it sold out in like the first 9 months. And I think after that, I said, okay, people are buying this. This is interesting. Let's double down, buy more products, and then just that's kind of what happened. It's just that revenue from our Amazon just came in, and we just started launching new products based off of that.
And how long is the shelf life of the product too?
2 years.
2 years. That's great. That's great. And so, how then did you think about what other products you should be selling? Was it based off of like Amazon reviews and kind of getting inspiration from customers in terms of what they wanted to see? Was it, more like internally of what you and your partner wanted to see? How did you think about like other products as well?
Yeah, it's really consumer centric is what we started off. Like all the products, the first five products were like, what do we want and what do would we take every day? Um, and then after that, then we looked at like research of like, okay, what are the trends? What are the people looking for? Let's get feedback from them. But yeah, the first initial products that we launched were all consumer centric of like, hey, we want to take this every day. We want to love it. So let's see if other people love it too.
Okay, got it. And so at what point after that Amazon, I guess hit that you were able to then um, sell out, what was kind of like the next step in terms of like sales channels wise? Was that then launching your own e-commerce store?
Yeah, so I would say after the first year, we launched our own e-commerce store, and then just kind of backtrack to like this whole time from 2018 to 2021. This was all a side hustle. So we both had full-time jobs, and we were just doing this on the side. So we didn't really put a lot of effort into it. And we outsourced a lot of stuff to people, and then I would say we really didn't get serious on the branded side. I would say we were an Amazon business from 2018 to like 2021, and then we focused on the brand, redoing the website and really having like a brand presence, and then really going hard into like how do we optimize our sales channels for like our website, ecom, digital, and then looking at like retail. And that was like retail was like in 2021 or 2022 is when we like started knocking on doors to see if there's opportunities in that area.
What was your process in terms of selecting like retailers or even how to get into retail with your products?
Yeah, I mean it was trial and error once again. I literally would search and scrape the internet of like where gyms. I mean, I started small. Like, I used to live in Newport, so it was like, okay, let's go. The gyms I go to, would they take it? And then from there, friends of friends. Who do you know who owns certain boutique shops? Okay, go there. And then I would literally physically go into these shops, knock on the door, walk in there, be like, hey, I have a product I think's amazing. Would you like to buy it for your store? Right. So it's like a lot of like foot traffic, and then I learned about like how do I see like beyond my like 10-15 mile radius, and then start emailing people. Like my goal is like let's try and email like 50 retailers a day, and then from there I was like, okay, email doesn't work, I need a call, so call at least 10 to 15, and then use like my connections to get into these stores. And I got luckily some of the bigger ones we got into are mostly because of my networking, and the product was really good that they loved it. But even today, it's still like knocking on doors. You're gonna get 10 no's for one yes.
Yeah, no, totally. I feel like that's always like the case no matter what, right? Whether you're like fundraising, whether you're trying to get into retail, there's always like way more no's. And then there's finally a yes. And it's like, wow, that one yes kind of pays out all those no's there too. How did you think when you would get into retail, when you get into a retailer, what would you find to be successful? Because obviously with the retailer, it's like great. It's kind of like great now. You're in the door now. Kind of like the real world work starts, right? With making sure that you're kind of merchandised properly, making sure that that people that are actually would be interested in your product are able to find your product in the store to make sure like those velocities are kind of at a good place. How did you kind of approach that on the retail side? And also, when you were getting in retail, was this still kind of like the side hustle, or is this now like the full time gig?
There's still slightly side hustle, full time gig, and then like retail's a whole other beast. Like no one tells you how difficult retail is. Like online's fun. You create an ad, people click on it, they buy it, you ship it. You're like, okay, cool. Retail's like you get into a store, you're like, all right, cool, they bought product, and then like a month later, you're like, did it sell? And they're like, no, and you're like, why? It's like, well, you have to train the team, right? So the team, the store needs to be trained on your product. So when people come in, they're gonna be like, hey, I'm looking for this, and be like, oh, I got a product for you. That and then like building relationships with these buyers, but also like at each store, right? Making sure that you go in there physically, like once a month, sit down them, build a report with them, tell them like give them free samples, tell them why your product, what it does, and how it helps. I think that was like a big thing. It's like I'm very enthusiastic about the product, but I'm also very like I love talking to people, and I love just like shooting the shit. So it's like building that rapport with them So they love you, so then they love the product. Your product's only gonna sell if you're like befriend the store manager or like the person who, like, if you think about when you walk into a store, who's your first line of offense, right? It's not the buyer, right? It's not the store manager. It's literally the customer, or it's the, what do you call it, the store clerk, or like someone who's working that section, who's going to be like, who's going to help be educated on your product to sell to a customer, because there's so many people who go into a store and they don't know what they're looking for, and they ask like, hey, what's the best product for this? And if that store clerk has your name, in the back of their head, like, oh, okay, TRUWILD, this is what it can help with, they're gonna refer that. So that's huge, I would say. And then also like store demos, sampling, merchandise, ad spend, like all these things that I never knew about. That's like really important to get like your product in front of the customer's mind when they come to the store.
100%. I mean, like, I think, that store, clerk, that store manager, those right there are kind of are the experts, right, to the customer. So when a customer is looking for something, if they're looking for a supplement that, is that would help them on with energy wise, and like in like the first use case for True Wild, you want to make sure that True Wild is on top of mind for them, because at the same time, like, this is also like the first foray into retail. So you're still building the brand in retail. So the customer still might not know who you are, right? And the brand. So you need to actually kind of rely on like these clerks and like the managers and what have you to actually kind of keep you top of mind, so that actually to actually help you build the brand to the customer, right?
Yeah. So I would, yeah, and just topping on that, every store I got into, I would sit down with everyone who worked there and just walk through all the products from A to Z to make sure that they're like not like educated on all of it. But that only goes so far because you have so much turn with these places that like you might talk to someone's ear off and then they might leave the next day.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. How, I mean, how did you also think about like partly like managing those distribution channels too? Were you kind of like always, I know it was, to begin with like a 10-15 mile radius, but like when you were kind of expanding and getting in stores, was it you constantly making trips and making sure like it was like merchandised properly and like you're building relationships? Did you also think about like hiring people to like to actually also like do those activities? What was kind of like, as you kind of like expanded in retail, how did the operation kind of evolve?
Just slowly and thoroughly, I guess I would say. Just making notes once a week to either call, check in on each store, go visit the store, and then as we progress, I recently hired a wholesale manager, and that's his job currently right now. So shout out to Richie. He's been amazing at what he does. The best sales guy that I know, but also he does a lot of other ad hoc stuff on top of wholesale. But yeah, it's creating a wholesale strategy around that to make sure that you have touch-ins with everyone.
How also do you approach like a wholesale, I mean a retailer too? In that, I know you have several products now online, quite a few SKUs. What is there like a SKU that maybe is like the hero SKU that you first approach the retailer for? Is there like a series of SKUs that you approach the retailer for? Like, how do you think about too what actual products should be in that particular store?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we have three hero products, and it's like really easy to, like, it's like adaptogens really hard to sell, right? Because no one really knows about adaptogens, even though it's a trend. But like, our motion product is like a natural pre-workout. You have a hydration that's like, hey, it's comparable to liquid IV, or we have a green that's like, think about AG1 but more affordable. And like our approach is get someone on the phone, ask them if they want a sample, send them samples with like a debrief, like an educational like breakdown of everything, and then follow up with them once they get it. So like that's kind of like a wholesale strategy. So it's like get the product in their hands as quick as we can, because we know that our product's gonna taste better than 90% of the products out there, and then it's calling them once they try it, they get them hooked and make that sale.
Got it. And so kind of like the three like heroes right now at least are like hydrate, motion, and then wild greens. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool. How also do you think about price when it comes to wholesale? Because like, we've had on some founders and they're like, listen, if I can't get like the price, if like we're priced like way too hard, like I had on Will Nitze, who's the founder of IQ Bar, and he was saying like, if my prices are so kind of underrated and like not talked about. But like, he's like, if we're in Walmart, for example, and my prices are way too high, then like it doesn't matter what the brand is. Like no one like that, like Walmart kind of consumer is not going to buy like my bar. And so how do you think about this when it comes to like the wholesale channel? Are you kind of assessing and kind of doing like of what other products are, what other companies are kind of selling their products for, and think about as well where you kind of fit in that set. What's kind of like that process?
Yeah, I mean, at first I didn't really have one, and now I think it's trying to be at par or below some of these. Because my biggest thing is like I want people to try it, and once they buy it and try it, they're gonna be a repeat customer and be like a better long-term value for us. So it's like don't price it so high, even though like you might lose money, right? I think like my strategy is like I want velocity. In order to get velocity, sometimes you have to lower price, and you have to be profitable too, because the only thing is too is that a lot of people don't like. I never understood this at like wholesale accounts. Your retailers want at least 50%, right? And so if you think about that, if you have to build that into your module and shipping it, but there is some like wiggle room to negotiate. So it's like they want 50%, they want ad spend. There's a lot of costs that people don't maybe understand too much when you get into retail.
Yeah, and that one can be, and I mean, kudos to you. That's what that's what it can be really difficult about going from D2C or being an e-commerce business into retail, in that the margin structure that you had for D2C, or the margin profile, maybe not might not work for retail wholesale. Obviously, like your margins are going to come down, right, from a wholesale model. But at the same time, maybe it actually doesn't make sense for some brands, just because or they might have to rethink in terms of what they're selling the product at online, because it actually may not be sense for wholesale. And it's kind of like one of those things too, where like if you price too high in wholesale, um I'd imagine like, okay, cool, like you're pricing high, but at the same time, if your velocities aren't there, then like they're probably not going to buy another PO from you, right? And so it's also, I'd imagine that's like part of like balancing that equation.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest opportunity that I tell people to like how you get velocity is like demos and sampling, right? I think a lot of people don't do that. I think a lot of people sell into these stores and then they say, "Oh, they're gonna buy it," but you have to get like demos and sampling to get people to try it.
What's your process then, on the sales side? Let's say like you just got into a new store. How long would you then demo or sample for? Do you also have to get like permission from the retailer in order to demo or sample?
Depends on the retailer, but my strategy is like within the first month, do a demo. Um, and within those like some of these accounts that we don't like oversee, if it's like on the East Coast, we would give them a free bag and tell them how to demo it and just do it themselves. But like people need to do a sampling program of some sort, or you hire outsource figure that way.
Got it. And even like, do you find in some of your accounts that you actually need to kind of keep demoing, just to make sure that you're kind of like top of mind with like new customers that are coming in, or is it one of those things that you kind of like demo, you're kind of really focused on that aspect for the first like few months, and then like it's either gonna maybe work or not work.
I think it depends again on the store and the retailer, but like some of these like small mom and pop independent stores, if they love your product, they will push it for you, and right, and like you don't need to do demos as much. But like some of these bigger stores, like we got in the Bristol Farms, Lazy Acres, those we have to do a demo at least like once or twice a month, because if we don't see the velocity drop significantly, um, and we don't get the sales that we want, right? When we're in those stores and demoing and people and trying them, like we're selling out our shelf that day, which is insane.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great. It's great to hear. And also, how did you also approach financing True Wild? Obviously I know this was kind of like started off as a side hustle, and it became, it seems like much bigger than like you ever kind of intended. But what was like the way that you actually like went about like financing? Did it first come from like like savings with like you and your partner, and then did you have to finance it like another way, or did you ended up like bringing some debt on, or like what? How do you think about overall like that structure?
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that because I'm we look in all of our financials the past 5 6 years and how we kind of grew that way, but we bootstrapped it. So my partner and I put $5,000 each into this, and then like we had to put more money over time because of let's say for capital for growing inventory, and then now we do kind of I work with a lot of different like manufacturers who do like loan payment manufacturing and shipping, and then some other kind of like Shopify Capital and some other things take on some loan and capital and debt to grow.
Got it. That makes sense. That makes sense. And yeah, yeah, no, it does. It does. It does. It definitely does. Also like loan payments from the manufacturer. I mean, then if you're also on the manufacturing side, how do you make sure that like the manufacturer that you work with can kind of has are able is able to like produce like enough product at for your as you're expanding? And do you think that there's ever going to be like a position where you're actually going to have to like move to like another facility, for example, as you keep on growing?
I'm actually having that conversation now, and it's been the most difficult year I think from supply chain right now I've ever had. So I'm looking to diversify and looking to not one manufacturer but three, just to help with like this year. I mean, I've been out of stock 6 times. Like that's the worst feeling in the world, and having to deal with customers and call them and email them, explain the situation, and then like just certain manufacturers lead times they promise they under deliver. It just are the biggest headache. So right now I'm constantly looking for new manufacturers just to like have a fallback plan and like an emergency plan where like if my current manufacturer somehow their lead time's too long, I have someone else who's got a shorter lead time and put a smaller run, even though it's gonna be more expensive, but I'll get that product on time and I won't be out of stock. So it's having these like I don't know if they're called like emergency supply chain plans, but just like diversifying to make sure that we don't run out of stock because that's the worst feeling.
What's been some of like the biggest reasons why you have been running out of stock? Is like a particular ingredient, for example, that's like difficult to source? Is it because, maybe like the manufacturers that you currently are, there's just more other brands that are maybe in the bigger priority because they might be, larger than True Wild? What do you think is like the biggest reason?
I think there's several. Demand forecasting is really difficult sometimes. Let's say 1 month I sell 300 units, the next month I can sell 700, right? Or less. And that really changes the demand curve. And then, like, really understanding kind of like your safety stock and how much to sit on. Or let's say we do a big promo and it's like Black Friday, we sell 1,000 units when I thought we were going to sell 200 units, And then at that time, it's like, oh shit, we got to order to make sure we don't run out of stock. You have like a lead time of 12 to 16 weeks. And then if the manufacturer sometimes, let's say someone else comes in and says, hey, sorry, it's not 12 to 16, it's actually more 18 to 20, those that adds to the equation as well. So it's like all these little things that like if like demand would say increases unexpectedly, your lead time increases unexpectedly, or like you can't get an ingredient, like all these little things add up. And then when you get your product, it's like let's say 6 weeks late, you just maybe you've sold out 2 weeks prior, you have 4 weeks of like out of stock product.
And in terms of the demand forecasting side of things, is it harder to demand forecast on like the e-commerce side and also demand on your site? Is that also where like the majority of sales are coming currently?
So we have so right now we have online, Amazon, retail, and then we have like three other like sales channels too, like eBay, Walmart, and some of these things. So it's like I constantly look at weekly inventory forecasting to really understand it, and I think it's just difficult because like your sale through velocity can change, and just based off of that, and just it could be me just buying on spot versus like long term holding. I just look at supply chain differently than other people. You can do two ways, right? You can buy a bunch of inventory and hope that it sells, right? And but you're sitting on all that cash flow, all that cash is in inventory, or you do lean manufacturing, which I do, which I think this year I've learned that I actually fucked up multiple times, is that you buy lean thinking that you're gonna have, less cash on hand on inventory, but then you're gonna time it perfectly to get the product. So I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot.
So are you right now leaning in terms of my like buying more in bunch on the on the inventory side?
I think it's quarterly bunch is like my new strategy versus like a monthly rolling forecast.
I reckon since you have been operating like lean manufacturing and kind of been purchasing on a monthly basis, you maybe didn't have this problem. But did you ever have problems uh with dead stock or inventory that you're unable to sell?
Yeah, we did that last year. So maybe it was in 2021 during COVID. We were selling through our base layer. Now it's called Protect Plus, the immune supplement. Um, it sold. We bought like 1,000 units. It sold out in 2 days because everybody wanted immune supplements. And then so then we were like, okay, let's buy 5,000. That sold out. Then we buy 10,000, and then we're like, oh, we're great. And then as COVID slowly came down, I think that like hype around immune supplements dwindled. So we were sitting on like let's say 5,000 units for a year, coming on an expiration date. What do you do? And like luckily there's ways that you can retest product and increase the shelf life, but then you have to relabel. Or we offer the donations, or there's other third party penny, I don't want to call them penny stocks, but they're like liquidators, I guess I should say. There's liquidators who will buy your product at like at cost and sell them. So that's the other end of the stick, right? If you order too much inventory, it doesn't sell through, you're sitting on inventory that's going to go out of stock, and then you just lose on all that profit.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. It seems like one maybe advantage that your business has, at least in the world of consumables, is that kind of like 2 year shelf life. So it seems like, I mean, certainly sitting on 5,000 units, that's like not great. That doesn't sound great, but it seems like since it is like a longer shelf life than like maybe like a bar or kind of like like something
A sports
that's
drink,
edible.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A sports drink or something that's edible. Um, then then I'd imagine that that you can order or like kind of like make that bet just because you know that like you still have, okay, we have not 2 years to sell it, but maybe we have a year to sell it as opposed to like maybe 2 months or 1 month to sell something. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm interjecting. The only thing I'm not saying too is that like we do is storage costs too, so that plays into effect, and then also product
Oh, of
and product
course.
quality. So like if we're storing it, like we're in Texas now for fulfillment, but if you store products at a high temperature, it might clump, right? And so you could say, why don't you, Zach, why don't you just buy all your inventory January 1st for the next year? You can do that, but you have the risk of like inventory storage fees and then product potentially quality issues depending on the temperature it's stored at.
What's the ideal temperature to store your products?
I mean, it's ambient, but at the same time, you had desiccant bags in there, so it helps remove the moisture. But still, like you can't control the environment of your fulfillment centers.
Yeah, that's tough because I'd imagine that, if you have like a refrigerated product, for example, then okay, great. Then, it has to be refrigerated. Obviously, that's a premium, but it has to be refrigerated. But if your product that's, shelf stable, that's difficult because it's like, okay, then I can like put this anywhere. Well, actually, that's not really the case, right? In terms of like the temperature. But you don't kind of like think about that just because it's like not, I'd imagine it's not like a refrigerator or a frozen product.
Yeah, and you don't know too. It could be ambient, and you're totally fine, and customer guessing it's clumped, and you're like, well, here's all my product like that then, right? So I just don't like taking that risk. I rather have fresh product for customers.
No, it's totally. So where you? I remember you talked a little bit about like demand when you kind of purchased like those like 10,000 units, and then maybe demand kind of soured a little bit. Where do you think that we're at right now in terms of like on the demand side for your products, as well as like on the sales channel side? Do you find that more and more people, because of course on the e-commerce side of things, we've seen like e-commerce penetration has kind of like come down to kind of like pre where, I mean, I guess we're at where we would have been if COVID never happened. Um, uh, and people have obviously like returned to kind of return to store, and of course, retail is still like 80% or so of products being purchased in retail and store. Um, how do you think about kind of like these things and on the distribution channels of where demand is currently?
Yeah, so I think we're different in that we started Amazon focused and then I went to ecom. Most people go
Mm,
ecom, then go on
ecom,
Amazon, then
then
explore.
Amazon.
So we're a little bit, I would say, flip flop. And we were 100% Amazon, and my goal is to be 50-50. And now we're kind of going, I think we're at like 65, 70% Amazon, 20% website, and then the remaining, 10, 15% elsewhere. So my big thing is like I would love in a perfect world, 50% on Amazon, 40% on or ecom, and then 10% wholesale or retail.
Ah, okay, got it. Got it. So you actually don't as much want like a big retail penetration for True Wild.
I do, but when people don't realize when you go big on retail, you need a team, right? You can keep it very lean and simple when you're on ecom or Amazon. When you go retail strategy, you have to hire like 5 to 10 people dramatically if you want to grow like scale. Because people don't realize you have to someone who's managing accounts, managing the demos, managing trucking and shipping, managing the ad spend, managing like all the invoices to make sure that they don't like double count. Because there's a lot of horror stories I've heard that people like go in the retail and they're like, we want to grow, but then we just dramatically increase our overhead by 2x just to manage these accounts that might not be profitable.
No, that makes a ton of sense. My final question for you, Zach. What would you value more? $100 of inventory, so $100 of COGS. This is a price you pay for COGS. This is not the retail price. This is the price you pay for COGS. Um, or $100 cash.
I would take COGS because then I can have a product to sell, right? Because if I have $100,
Love it.
great, I'm gonna go
Yep.
buy. Yeah. I was gonna make a joke and say take that $100, put in a Bitcoin, and hope it goes well. But yeah, no, I would take the COGS any day.
Maybe a few years back, right? That makes sense. That makes sense. All right, Zach. Thanks so much for your time, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And there you have it. It was a pleasure chatting with Zachary. Zachary, thanks again for coming on the podcast. And thank you also to Manufactured, who are the producers of this podcast. Manufactured is an online platform that helps brands manufacture, finance, and distribute inventory across 20 industries and 25 countries. If you're a brand owner and operator and you're looking for inventory financing help or want to explore our manufacturing network, check out manufactured.com.